You're listening to Easy Travels, an original podcast from Nexion Travel Group. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Easy Travels podcast. My name is Chris. I'm here, as always, with Coach Martin Mussey, here somewhere in the Nexion Travel Group mobile headquarters, either floating out in space or deep under the ocean, wherever we are. We're everywhere. How you doing today, Martin?
I am doing good, Chris. Today, I am just at the home headquarters, sweating it out. My AC's out the last several days, so we are getting through. But boy, we are podcasting as we go.
Podcasting is grueling work. You can't do it if you don't break a sweat.
Right? Yeah, it's like that yoga. What is that? Hot yoga.
Hot yoga.
This is hot podcast.
Hot podcasting. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing here, Martin. It's hot podcasting, and I will not hear any argument from anyone. No, but no, we're actually here to talk about something a little different today, which is, I think, something that we can all relate to. I know I can relate to it. You can relate to it. Many of our advisors and many people in the industry and just in general can probably relate to it. Everyone can probably relate to it. And that is imposter syndrome. You may have heard the term before, but Martin, do you want to give us a quick rundown for people who may not be familiar? What does imposter syndrome mean?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a great topic, and I'm glad we're talking about it today because, this kind of came about with having conversations with lots of newer advisors that, deal with this. But I began to think about this, that it's not only brand new people to the business, but also many times people who've been doing this a long time can still face imposter syndrome. Matter of fact, little self-promotion here. I actually wrote a blog article about this in the Travel High Five, I call it, in the Digital Compass magazine for the Vax Vacation Access online. And, when I was writing the article, I think this is useful for us to start off with. It was the definition of the imposter syndrome. And the definition is literally this: it is the inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved, which I think is interesting. And I also sort of went on to talk about how we face imposter syndrome because we get going on a business or on a new career or whatever it may be. And at some point, we realize that the things that we're saying to people are going to have an impact. I mean, if you've known anything about communication and human beings, what I'm trying to sell to you, convince you of, talk to you about is potentially going to have an impact on your decision making, be it buying, be it something in your career, be it whatever. And that is what brings about that imposter syndrome if you think about it for too long. So knowing the definition, knowing how that, sort of sits with regard to impact on people, how do you react to that when you hear the definition?
It's funny. The phrase comes to mind that you always hear in the professional world: fake it till you make it.
Right.
I think some people never get out of that headspace where it's like you can be working in a job for 5, 10, 20 years and it still feels like you're faking it till you make it. And that's kind of what imposter syndrome feels like, at least to me. And I know, I've said this before, you've said this before. I'm my own worst critic. I have very often, probably some of the harshest things I've ever said or received in my life have come from myself. I have said some very harsh things to myself that I did not deserve to hear. And it's always just because, it comes from a place that I don't even really understand. And the thing you have to understand about me, I'm the kind of person that can get up in front of a crowd, which is apparently a big phobia for a lot of people. I can get up in front of a crowd, talk, do whatever. And I don't really get nervous. I might feel a little nervous, but I don't feel nervous about that the same way that other people do. So, the way I look at it is just kind of like when you're an adult, the social cost of embarrassment or any kind of social humiliation is actually a lot lower than we realize. So whenever I do something like I get up on stage, I embarrass myself, I put my foot in my mouth, and I just start thinking to myself, okay, well, what's the worst that's going to happen now? Are the cool kids not going to let me sit at their lunch table? I mean, what? Like, what's going to happen if you do something foolish as an adult? Like, as long as it's not you end up losing your job, there's really not a lot of cost to embarrassing yourself. So that's something I've always had kind of an easy time with compared to a lot of what I hear from a lot of other people. But then at the same time, I will, I write things for Nexion. So for example, I wrote an article for our Escape magazine about the Silk Road, which I got I bring that one up because I got a lot of compliments from people, other coworkers told me how good it was and they really enjoyed reading it. But the thing is, whenever I'm done writing something, I have this little Franz Kafka conversation with myself where it's like, okay, I'm horrible. I'm the worst. I have no talent. I'm a hack. I may as well just throw this in the garbage. I may as well give up now, because there's some part about myself that just won't allow me to admit that I might actually be good at something. And I don't know why that is, but it seems to be a very common problem that a lot of people have. And even though I can get up in front of a group and feel perfectly confident and comfortable when I create something of my own and put it out there, there's still that strong sense of doubt. Like, how can this possibly be good if I made it? I don't know why that is.
Well, what's interesting is I probably have a little bit of insight for you only from some of my prior business coaching training and background in courses and classes that I took. And, this is one of those things that goes to the classic question of credibility. Am I credible? And I'll give you an example we used to give, and this is something I sometimes share with people in my business coaching. And this goes to the human nature of how we value ourselves. So interestingly enough, Chris, that actually goes back to exactly what you said, at the beginning, is that you're your own worst critic. It's how we value ourselves. So here's the example. There was a social experiment done once where they had a job ad that was put out in a local newspaper, and it was, again, this social psychological experiment. And in that job ad, there was 2 different job ads placed. The content of the job description itself was exactly the same, but the salary was different. So one job ad said the salary was at some $200,000 a year annual, and the other one maybe placed it at $75,000 a year. And they did this to sort of prove or show how people place their value. Which one of those got the most applicants, do you think?
I'm going to take the counterintuitive guess and say that it was the one with the lower salary because more people thought they could get it.
Exactly. Or conversely, that I'm not worth 200,000. I can identify with that description, but surely it must be harder than that, or there's more to that. And I'm not sure I value myself at 200,000, but I can see myself or value myself at $75,000. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
and
it's sad too.
It is kind of sad, but that is a little bit of the answer to what it is that you were talking about when you said you're not sure why it is, but it's value that we place on ourselves, which is a little bit sad. So let's talk about if we acknowledge it, then we go, okay, what can we do to get out of it? So this may be helpful. What are some things that you have been through in terms of like different times or stages where you have felt that imposter syndrome? And has it been at different stages of your career?
I mean, for me, literally every time I've started a new job, and I've started quite a few, like, in my 20s, I, hopped from lily pad to lily pad, trying to find something that was right for me. I've been here with Nexion for about 3 years now, but, I've started a lot of different jobs, and whenever I do, it's always just, okay, like there's a little part of me in the back of my head that's like, okay, I fooled them. I tricked them into thinking that I actually have value. And I know that that's wrong. I know that that's not a healthy thing to think. I know that I do have value, but there's a little part of me that's just like, wait a minute, I'm just a guy. And it's also maybe we're overvaluing, or not overvaluing, but like overestimating other people. We're thinking like, look at all these other people who are so talented and so knowledgeable, and I'm just me. And so that's part of it too, is you're comparing yourself to others, not realizing that those others are probably having the exact same thoughts and comparing themselves to you.
Yeah, no, exactly. I wrote a little bit about this in the article that, there's this common myth that, more, the myth is that credibility only comes from time in this industry, time in the job you've been doing, having a long client list, all of that. But yeah, for me personally, I kind of go back to when I started as a business coach, and not only was I going to go be a business coach for small to medium sized businesses across all kinds of industries, it hadn't been defined yet. I went to the training, very arduous training and certification at that, and just knew that out of the gate, I needed to go find business, because in the end, this is just a business, and I needed to sell my services. But in selling my services, it's one thing to sell a package that says, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get my time. We're going to work together on your profitability, on your time management, on your sales and marketing. But then to actually get knee deep in doing it and giving people these ideas, these strategies. I would work with some businesses, Chris, that had been in business for 10 and 15 years. And I just came on the scene as a brand new business coach. You want to talk about imposter syndrome? You're like, who am I? I've never, and by the way, that was my first experience running a business. I'd never run a business before. I had worked in corporate, America. And so that was the strongest sense of imposter syndrome probably that I ever had, was to be standing in front of people, giving them advice on increasing their business and making their business better when I was just fighting to survive and make my business better by hoping I got their sale in their business. Yeah. Crazy, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you something else? Because I think, at least for me, there's another component to it, which is, something I really dislike is arrogance, ego, people who are really full of themselves, right. People who puff themselves up and are just, mean spirited and just think highly of themselves and lowly of everyone else. Like, I never want to be that. I don't like those type of people. And so I think for me, a little bit of the imposter syndrome comes from, I really, really, really don't want to seem egotistical. I really don't want to seem arrogant. So it's almost like any break I give myself, any compliment I give myself is just, I'm puffing myself up in a way that feels icky to me. It's like, ew, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to compliment myself, but I should, sometimes I deserve a little compliment. Sometimes we all deserve a little pat on the back. But does that ever happen to you where, you find yourself, you're trying to reassure yourself, you're trying to, give yourself some confidence, give yourself a break, and just you don't like it because it feels arrogant. It feels like your ego is taking over.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that has happened both in my role here in this business as a business coach. And then prior to that, I worked for 12 years in human resources, working my way up to being a director of human resources at a corporation. And there was many times where you walk this fine line between, I get the credit that I deserve for putting myself in a position to get this role or these roles or promotions, but not come across arrogant, bragging, all of those sorts of things. So yeah, it is definitely happened for sure. You know what? One of the best pieces of advice I had ever heard with regard to that, I'll share it with everyone, is I had a manager once because some of, I think what you talk about there is a little bit of our own personal natures. Because don't we both know people who are just confident in everything they say, and maybe it doesn't always come across as arrogant, but you look at them and marvel, how is it that they can just say that and do that? Yeah. And so this manager once said to me after losing out on a promotional opportunity in an interview, she basically told me, in giving good feedback, and it's always stuck with me. She's like, you have got to toot your own horn. You have to. But Martin, I know what you're concerned about. I know that you don't want to come across as a braggart. You don't want to, sound like an ego or anything like that. She's like, but if you don't do it, no one else will do it for you. So you have to do it. But guess what? Your own concern about how you'll come across will make that information come across in the appropriate way. And that always stuck with me. You got to do it. Yeah. You got to do it.
Yeah. We all have to be our own cheerleader sometimes. And it's very hard, because I think, and that's the thing we haven't talked about yet, is just that, we talked about how common of an occurrence this is, imposter syndrome, but some of the most talented people in history have had the same struggle. I mean, I forget all the names. I mentioned one of my favorite writers, Franz Kafka, earlier. He's probably one of the most famous people for having imposter syndrome. But I remember once reading a whole list of famous people, famous writers, and, people who had become very successful and famous, letters they wrote to themselves or to their spouses or to a friend or to something, where they're just completely dunking on themselves. Like, I'm the worst. I'm useless. Yeah. I'm worthless. I have no talent. I may as well give up. Every extremely talented person you've ever heard of, like, think of the most creative person who you admire more than any other in the world. You can almost guarantee that person has had those exact same feelings. So exactly. I think that's a good indication that, just because you're feeling those things, just because your brain is telling you that story, doesn't mean you have to buy it.
Right. And it's normal. We've all gone through it. Just as you said, I think one of the most famous examples of that, lots of them, as you said, there's a list, but one of the biggest ones I've heard recently, based on a book that I recently read, is Abraham Lincoln. Do you know how introspective that man was? And it comes across in his letters. I think because there's so many letters from him, similar to what you just said, that he was almost a reluctant leader, but knew that he just had to do it. He had to step forward and do these things in history, but he never fully believed he was the right one to be doing it. So that's an interesting one. The other topic that this gets to is, and I'm going to kind of lump this into this discussion about, why do we always seem to strive for this perfection? I have talked to a number of advisors that are brand new, especially when they're brand new. Once you built the business and you're going, you're going, but I'm sure it'll be about something else in their business. But in the beginning, I hear so many people say, I am not going to do that thing or attempt to sell that until I'm perfect, until I know this inside and out. And we always tell them that perfection will not exist. So you've just got to get out there and do it and learn by the doing. But any thoughts where you've had to try to be, where you thought yourself, nope, I'm not going to do this. I'm not perfect yet. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, all the time, really. Like, I have to convince myself that I'm not perfect at it because I haven't done it, right? Like, if I want to get good at it, I have to do it. And that's the thing that, another difficult thing that is obvious when you say it out loud, but we still have to, like, really remind ourselves sometimes. Most people aren't good at things right away. It takes time and practice and, honing and sharpening your skills. And sometimes people just forget that and say, like, I've definitely forgotten that in my life. And, I started doing something, I'm not good at it because I've never done it before. And then my temptation is to just get frustrated with it, hang it up and say, this isn't for me. And maybe sometimes it's not. Not everything is for everybody, but you have to give yourself a break. And if something is something that you really want to pursue, then realize that it's worth the struggle. and that the struggle itself can be rewarding. It's like running a marathon. Running a marathon isn't fun while you're doing it. It's actually quite grueling. But it's something you build yourself up to, not because you enjoy it while you're doing it, because you're proud of yourself after you've done it, and probably also healthier. So it's one of those things, and I've known so many people who have thought they could never run a marathon who have done it. And it's one of those things you have to tell yourself, I might be bad at this, and you have to accept that. And that's, a difficult thing for some people to accept right away. Like, I'm going to be bad at this for a while before I get good at it. A lot of us don't like to even give the perception that we're bad at something because we're so insecure. And so, we're bad at something for a while because we haven't practiced it. And then we allow that to get to us, even though no one's really judging us for not being good at something we've never done. We judge ourselves and we say, that it is what it is. But actually, we just need to keep persevering.
Yeah. Yeah. I was the kind of person, people might be surprised by this. And in certain situations, I still do this, but in others, I am much, much better. But I used to be the kind of person that would not speak up until I had what I thought was a cohesive thought in my mind, having rehearsed it many, many times in my head before I'd say it. And, what I realized later is that that was just self-preservation, and I was potentially holding back from sharing something that would move a conversation forward, move an idea forward, even if it wasn't about perfection. So, I
think I'm still a little bit like that, honestly. Sometimes I still avoid saying things because I'm not sure how it's going to sound. Or I'll think about something for so long that by the time I have it right in my head, the subject will have already changed. Someone will have already moved on to something else. And so, that's happened to me many, many times.
Yeah. When you know that you're in a safe environment, I think that's the important part. And I know between us, Chris, and the teams we work in, they're safe spaces. They're safe environments professionally. So if there's anything, if I might have imparted anything even to you, I just speak it, put it out into the universe, because it does help move thoughts and ideas forward for a team. And I think the other thing, and this is what I want to bring a solution here, because I think we've been talking a lot about things that are like, yep, that exists. This happens. Yep. Me too. What are some solutions? And one solution I want to keep, in mind for everyone is that people are not always needing perfection. So if we think about it from a customer perspective, they don't need you to be perfect. Sometimes team members don't need us to be perfect. But what they do want and need is they just want trust. They want to be able to trust you at your word, trust you that if I say I'm going to come back to you with these quotes within this amount of time, I'm going to do it. Trust, like in our environment, if we say, hey, I'll take on that project and that's a deliverable and I will get it done. And our team members know through trust that you are and you're trustworthy. That's all in the end as a solution. I think that's all people are really looking for is trust over perfection.
Mm-hmm. And if I can offer maybe one more kind of solution, something that's worked for me, and because I used to feel this more strongly when I was younger. I still feel it today, but I think I have it a little more under control now in my 30s than I did in my 20s. Practice sort of controlled embarrassment for yourself. So this is something that's really helped me, and probably you as well, because you and I have both done like local community theater. I've gotten up in front of people in my community and totally embarrassed myself. And honestly, there's something that feels kind of good, kind of liberating about that, because it's like, okay, I embarrassed myself, and what happened? Nothing. I'm still fine. My spouse still loves me. I'm still healthy. I still have a roof over my head. Nothing has changed because I embarrassed myself. And I think so many people, like I mentioned earlier, so many of us have this hang up from childhood, like, oh no, I don't want to say something stupid. I don't want to say something embarrassing. I don't want people to laugh at me. But just like, running a marathon is sort of like controlled suffering. It makes you appreciate when you're laying on your couch later. It's like, oh, thank God I'm not running a marathon right now.
Right.
It's the same thing, that kind of controlled embarrassment. Like, getting up on stage and making a fool of yourself every once in a while. It allows you, or if that's not your thing, some other way. It could be however you like to perform, or whatever creative thing that you like to do. Just do it and don't care what anyone. Put yourself in a situation where you can be yourself and not care what anybody thinks.
Yeah.
And I think that can really help just sort of strengthen your ego a little bit, or strengthen your resolve to be like, okay, if I embarrass myself.
Yeah. Your resolve, your confidence, all of that. I know professionally, there's some people who will go do a version of that, getting out and performing, and do something like Toastmasters, which is extemporaneous, or the different styles of speaking. And they have to make presentations and speeches within this safe environment and group, and, get, sort of, what do they call it? Not critiques, but it's a critique, but it's what's the other word I'm looking for here?
Not sure.
I'll think of it, maybe. But yeah, that's a good one. And speaking of, we together, I don't know if have you ever done any improv yourself?
I've actually never done improv. No, I'd like to try it.
I absolutely encourage you to do it. Anyone listening, I encourage you to go take a class, even if it's just one, to see if you like it. You want to talk about the freedom of feeling like the controlled embarrassment, but fun in a safe environment. I know a comedy arena, establishment that I work at or belong to. They have every Tuesday night an improv jam. It's open to the public. It costs nothing. Come and play. And it feels like play. It is like going back to childlike play. So I greatly encourage anyone to give it a try, even if it's just to go to a jam or take one class in improv. I promise you it will potentially scare the bejesus out of you, but at the same time, it will give you that, that sense of childlike fun again. Yeah.
I love childlike fun.
Isn't it great? Hey, so to maybe wrap up this conversation, I think it's worthwhile to talk a little bit about, how are some ways that we can go about not comparing ourselves to others, and knowing that we're equipped to move forward. We bring to bear everything we've done in our life up to any point of something that we're trying to achieve. And it's those past experiences that go to our, that go into what it is that we're trying to do. So now, when I say that, when I talk about experience, I do think to myself, well, I know we can say those words, but there's always going to be somebody out there or in a certain group of people that's going to say, yeah, but I am like fresh out of school starting this, or I am really fresh. And I know that when I was in my 20s, still trying to figure out some things in my way in the professional world, this was a little bit harder to bring some of those experiences, because I thought to myself, I don't have those experiences. But what have you done? Have you experienced that when you were younger? And how did you deal with it? Do you remember?
Probably not well, honestly. I was that kind of person. I think I've talked about this before. We were talking about, my role as a communications person. I went to college straight out of high school because that was the expectation, not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And so it was kind of inevitable that when I got into the workforce that I was going to feel some imposter syndrome, because it was just like, okay, now I'm here. And there's all these expectations being put on me. And, of all the cool things you learn in college, real world practical job skills aren't always at the forefront. And, I remember, being 23 and doing an internship in New York City, or I was actually living in New Jersey, but the internship was in New York City, and just feeling like, on the one hand, like, this is amazing. Like, I'm walking around, I can see the Empire State Building's over there. But at the same time, it's like, this is so much bigger than I am. And like, how did I, there's a lie that we tell ourselves, like, how did I weasel my way into this? And it's like, no, you did it because, you worked hard and you got to a place that you wanted to get, and now you're here, and now it's time to take the next step. And so I think maybe for me, the problem was always just getting hung up on, like, is this really right? Is this going to work? And, thinking about the past and thinking about the future rather than just thinking about what was directly ahead of me.
Right. And living in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. Just being in the moment, knowing that you brought yourself to that moment and it was your actions. And I think we tend to forget, as many people listening, I'm sure, we tend to forget to take the credit, take ownership for something that you have achieved and that got you there. I remember being 20 something and you'd look around, much like you. I was still trying to figure things out. But did you ever have that friend or somebody you knew? I mean, it was in the small handful of people you can think of, maybe even only one or two fingers, that there was somebody that you knew. They're like, oh, yeah, so-and-so started a paper company, or so-and-so started this T-shirt company. They're doing amazing. They're doing, then you look into it, you're like, they really are doing amazing. And how did they have the wherewithal to, and overcome all the things that, I'm being all angst driven about. That was always amazing to me to see people like that. So I do think some people just have it innately in them as well.
And also, kind of on a related note, you probably know people like this as well, people who just from an early age, some people from the time they're 2 years old, they know exactly what they want to do. Like, they have an interest. And from very early in childhood, they focus on that thing. They say, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And I've always been just profoundly jealous of those people. Like, to know what you want to do your whole life and never have any confusion about it. Just, wow, that must be amazing. But you can't go on comparing yourself to people like that, just because, it's just the world needs generalists, right? Like, the world needs people who know a little about a lot, people who didn't know what they wanted to be when they grew up, people who just wanted to be an adult. And people who just wanted to go out and explore and figure things out for themselves. And so I think for me, the thing I always come back to is that it's always about, this is related to travel as well. It's about the journey. It's not about the destination. You got to learn to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to wrap this up, I'm going to give just a final thought from my perspective. I'll turn it over to you for maybe a final thought as well and to close us out. But, I think about this. At the end of the day, this topic of being, feeling like an imposter, having imposter syndrome, it is not a bad thing to feel like an imposter at times. Pretty normal, as a matter of fact. We've talked about it now throughout the podcast. But working on it, it doesn't disappear overnight. You just have to recognize it. You've got to reframe how you think about it and, lean into any of the strengths that you bring to the table and do it. And I like to leave everyone with this sort of thought, is that instead of worrying about being a perfectionist or becoming the expert, think about this. You are all an expert in progress. So
I like that. And just to close it out on maybe even a more optimistic note, like we mentioned earlier, all the talented people who have experienced just intense, horrible imposter syndrome in their lives. I almost think about it now, like when I feel imposter syndrome, it's like, okay, this is a sign that I am actually good and worthy and deserve to be here. Like the fact that I am having these thoughts, because if I was just an arrogant jerk who was not nearly as good as I thought I was, I wouldn't be having these thoughts. I'd just be walking around all confident, like, yep, I'm good at everything. But the fact that I am having these doubts almost reassures me now, because it's like, okay, I'm going through the same thing that all of my heroes went through. I'm going through the same thing that all the most talented and creative people have gone through. This is okay. This is normal. This is part of the process. And that gives me some reassurance.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that perspective. It means that you care. And so let's do this together. Let's be committed to care as we work through and help others work through their, possible imposter syndromes.
We're all better than we think we are.
Indeed. That is for sure.
until next time, if you're experiencing any imposter syndrome, please remember what we said here today. And in the meantime, easy travels. Take care of yourself.
Easy travels, everyone. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Drop us your thoughts or even show topic ideas in the comments of this episode, or email us at communications@nexion.com.